Every generation has a story the world tells about them. Boomers had the dream, millennials had the burnout, Gen Z has social media, but Generation X got something nobody put on a poster. They are invisible in plain sight. The psychology behind that silence? It's more fascinating than anything you've heard about any other generation. If you're part of Generation X, born somewhere between 1965 and 1980, or if you've always wondered why they seem so unshakable, so quietly capable, so completely unbothered by things that send everyone else spiraling, this is for you. Because what shaped your mind is genuinely rare. And by the end of this video, you'll understand exactly why. Here's what the world says about Gen X: you're cynical, you're detached, you don't care enough, you don't share enough. You sit in meetings and say nothing while everyone else performs their enthusiasm, and people read that as coldness. But here's what's actually happening. Psychologists call it defensive pessimism. Basically, it means your brain learned early that hope without evidence is dangerous. You watched your parents preach stability while divorce rates exploded through the 70s and 80s. You watched loyal employees get handed pink slips after decades of service. Your nervous system took notes, and it built a prediction engine that runs constantly in the background, scanning for threats, preparing for the worst, staying 3 moves ahead. That's not cynicism, that's cognitive sophistication. Your brain doesn't waste energy on wishful thinking because it was trained in an environment where consequences were immediate and unforgiving. While other people are still reacting, your mind has already run 3 scenarios and picked the safest path forward. You don't call it a gift, you call it common sense, but it's neither common nor simple. And here's the thing about the silence. Gen X grew up when privacy was the default. You messed up as a kid and maybe 5 people knew about it. No cameras, no screenshots, no permanent record. The idea of broadcasting your life to strangers doesn't feel exciting to you. It feels reckless. Not because you don't understand social media, you literally built the platforms it runs on. It's because you learned something younger generations are only now discovering. The less people know about you, the less they can use against you. And there's a specific habit that Gen X developed in childhood that explains almost everything about how you operate today. We'll get to that. But first, here's the part that even most Gen Xers don't fully understand about themselves. And that's wild. A study published in the American Journal of Orthopsychiatry found that by 1984, roughly 7 million children between 5 and 13 were regularly unsupervised after school. 7 million kids going home to empty houses, making their own snacks, solving their own problems, with zero adult oversight. Researchers call this a high contingency environment, a setting where actions and outcomes are directly linked with no buffer, no safety net, no one softening the consequences. Your brain adapted to that. It built neural pathways optimized for real-time consequence prediction. That's why Gen X tends to think 3 steps ahead in ways that genuinely baffle younger generations. It's not intuition, it's survival architecture. Now here's where it gets uncomfortable, and this is important. Research in the Journal of Adult Development shows that Gen Xers report significantly lower levels of seeking social support during stressful periods. Not because you don't have people to call, because asking feels like failure. Your self-reliance isn't just a strength, it's also a wall. And sometimes that wall keeps out the exact help you actually need. But wait. This goes deeper than anyone realizes. But here's what's fascinating. That empty house didn't just make you independent, it made you a fundamentally different kind of learner. Before the internet, knowledge had physical weight. You spent hours in libraries pulling card catalog drawers, hunting through shelves for a single book that might hold the answer. Information cost effort. And cognitive psychologists have a term for what that produces: deeper encoding. When information requires effort to obtain, your brain integrates it more permanently into long-term memory. You don't just know things, you understand them in your bones. That's a completely different relationship with knowledge than scrolling through search results and forgetting what you read 30 seconds later. And let's be honest about something. You also learned to fix things, not because it was a hobby, because nobody was coming to help. Your bike chain snapped, you flipped it upside down and got grease on your hands. The TV flickered, You figured out which connection was loose. That built what engineers call mechanical intuition, a deep, embodied belief that with enough patience and a screwdriver, you can master the physical world. And that belief extended beyond objects. It shaped how you approach problems at work, in relationships, in life. You don't panic, you diagnose. You troubleshoot, you fix. And here's that childhood habit I mentioned earlier, the one that explains everything. It's this: you learned to sit with silence. No phone, no notifications, no algorithm feeding you the next distraction. Just you and your thoughts in an empty house, afternoon after afternoon. You became comfortable with boredom. And that capacity, the ability to be alone with your own mind without panicking, is now one of the rarest psychological skills on the planet. Most people under 30 have never experienced an hour without stimulation. You did it every single day for years. And the next part is what explains so much about why Gen X and younger generations sometimes can't understand each other at all. Now, before the comment section explodes, this isn't about one generation being better, it's about what different environments build. Gen X grew up in the shadow of the Cold War. Teachers talked about nuclear annihilation like it was a weather forecast. Duck and cover drills under desks that wouldn't stop a stiff breeze. When the adults around you act like the world might end but insist you shouldn't worry, your brain learns to hold two contradictory ideas at once, and it learns to keep distance, emotional distance, just in case. That's where the irony comes from. The dry humor, the refusal to take anything too seriously. It's not apathy, it's armor. Crack a joke before something stings. Keep things at arm's length so they can't reach your chest. And here's something that sounds contradictory. That same generation that won't ask for help will be the first to show up when you need it. Quietly. Without fanfare. Without a social media post about it. Because Gen X learned loyalty not from institutions, but from the small circle of friends who were there when no one else was. But there's a cost to that armor, and most Gen Xers have never named it out loud. Here's the part that's harder to say. Some of you didn't just become self-reliant, you became unable to depend on anyone. The empty house didn't just teach you independence, it taught you that needing someone is a liability. And for some Gen Xers, that lesson went too deep. The wall you built to survive childhood became the wall that keeps intimacy at a distance in adulthood. You handle every crisis alone, not because you're strong, but because the 8-year-old inside you still believes that no one's coming. And sometimes that armor doesn't just protect you, it isolates you. It makes the people who love you feel like they can never quite reach you, like there's always a door you won't open. So it's worth asking yourself honestly, do you prefer solitude because it genuinely nourishes you? Or because vulnerability still feels like a threat your nervous system can't tolerate? Because one of those is peace, and the other is armor over an active wound. Here's the truth that closes every loop. Generation X might be the last generation that truly knows what it means to sit alone with your own thoughts, to be bored and survive it, to solve a problem without Googling the answer, to show up for people without posting about it. That's not nostalgia. That's a psychological capacity that is actively disappearing from the human experience. You're not cold. You're not cynical. You're not invisible because you failed. You're invisible because you never needed the spotlight to know your own worth. You're wired for depth over noise, for competence over performance, for loyalty you can feel over loyalty you can photograph. Here's a distinction worth remembering. There are two kinds of strength: the kind that announces itself, loud, visible, constantly performing, and the kind that just holds, quietly, without applause, without an audience. Ask yourself which one describes you. Because if it's the second, you're not lacking anything. You're just playing a completely different game. Such bridging people don't get applause. They just hold everything together. And maybe that's the most Gen X thing of all, not caring whether anyone notices. You were built in empty houses and library silence and afternoon light nobody photographed. You were shaped by consequence, not comfort. And what that produced isn't damage, it's depth. The kind of depth that doesn't perform, doesn't announce itself, doesn't need a single like to know it's real. Gen X didn't disappear. They just never needed anyone to watch.